So, you are an expert in tech manufacturing. You oversee operations in more than 100 countries. What are some of the trends that you are watching, and what's top of mind for you right now?
It's interesting you asked that because we're looking at our planning for 2025 and 2026. And a real trend we see is from a global perspective, our customers are pushing more and more out from a third party perspective, whether it's their data, whether it's their services, whether it's their infrastructure. They're pushing a lot more of that out to save costs, to leverage maybe economies of scale of what their partners have. We do manufacturing of data protection and cybersecurity devices. And a big risk that's happening is they're also pushing those. The thought is they would be pushing the risk out to the third parties, but it's actually increasing their risk as a customer. So we're seeing a lot of opportunity as a cybersecurity company that those customers that are starting to think about how do I actually still leverage the third parties, but have more control and lead to what our business critical assets are. I think the pervasiveness of third party taking on more work and us being globally integrated, the key is going to be how do you make sure you still keep control of the core business assets that drive your business? How do we actually push more out, being more intentional, but what are we going to do if a disaster does happen? My view is if you haven't been hacked, you just don't know you've been hacked.
Right.
The
Right.
cybersecurity risk is just going to increase more and more. So what are you doing up front when you form those agreements with the third party, or when you choose that third party in terms of how they're going to be handling data, how quickly you're going to get that, be able to keep control of that data? I think that's the key.
When you're thinking about supply chain, I have to imagine that tariffs and the potential complexity of a global trade war has got to be top of mind too. How are you thinking about that in this planning process?
I actually think the planning doesn't change because really, I think a core fundamental of global supply chain is you always have to have second and third sources. You always have to have options because whether it's tariffs, whether it's pandemic, whether it's a boat that's stuck in the Panama Canal, you see all those things that happen, whether it's a flood that happens in Taiwan that floods out factories. I think us staying with the basics of always having backup plans, having multiple sources of where your supply is coming from, making sure you're diversified in multiple locations. I think that's the key. I don't think tariffs necessarily are the only reason to do that, but you're right. With that coming, it just makes them even more and more important.